if they get the chance. They were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not but be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. Joining me this evening, we have John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Cammy. How are you doing?
Okay, John, and we've also got Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig. Start as you mean to go on, Craig.
I've got a poem for you. I've got a poem for you, Cammy.
Go on then, Craig. Let's have your poem.
Stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone, prevent the dog from barking with a juicy bone, silence the pianos with muffled drum, bring out the coffin, let the mourners come. The stars are not wanted now, put everyone out, pack up the moon and dismantle the sun, bore away the ocean and sweep up the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. Blair Kinghorn is leaving Edinburgh.
Is this? I mean, it's hardly like the Ravens at the Tower of London, though, Craig, is it? I mean, the castle's no bit to fall down because Blair Kinghorn's no Edinburgh anymore, is it?
My life is over. I'm finished with this rugby rubbish. I've done.
The light has gone out
The light
in
has
Craig
gone out.
Manson's heart. It has been extinguished. What a way to relaunch the podcast, Craig. Welcome everybody, and welcome especially to any new listeners joining us who've discovered the podcast. We're gonna, don't worry, Craig. We'll get to Blair later on. You'll have your chance. But what a lovely opening that was! Beautiful recital. We have some news, and we kind of hinted this at the end of the Patreon podcast last week. But we have a new home for the podcast, which is the Sport Social Network, which is a fairly new network of sports podcasts. So they have the Captain's podcast with Sam Warburton. They've got Joe Marler's podcast, friend of the pod, Joe Marler. Jam out of your donut, Cammy. Still got me blocked on Twitter. And also friends of the podcast, Rock and Roll, the rap series of Welsh podcasts, and Blood and Mud as well, are all on the Sports Social Network. So we're very pleased to be with them, and welcome to anybody who's found us through that. This is the Scottish Rugby podcast. We cover everything to do with Scottish Rugby. We do a main podcast every week, and also for the price of £3 a month, you can sign up to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. You can get a weekly bonus episode. So the episode that you're listening to now, if you're listening on an audio podcast app such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast app, you'll get adverts in it. If you want an ad-free version and you want bonus content, it's £3 a month through Patreon. If you're quite happy with adverts, by all means, continue listening. And you'll get a kind of condensed 40-minute run through the latest happenings in Scottish Rugby, as well as analysis of the big matches. Normally, there's four of us. There's a rotating cast of podcast members. Jonny McGinty may be joining us later. He's making salmon blinis for his kids' packed lunch at the minute. That's the message he's just put in the podcast chat. Tell us your Tory without telling us your Tory, Jonny McGinty. Claims he's a Glasgow Warriors fan, but clearly his bread is buttered on the east side.
I don't think I don't think those two, the Glasgow Warriors fans and Tory supporters, I don't think it's as mutually, as exclusive as you would think.
We should say there are, and everybody's welcome on this podcast. We cast know, whether you like salmon blinis or not.
Yeah,
salmon blinis or a jelly piece, you're all welcome here.
Absolutely, yeah. And we'll figure out which one of them you can put on a pizza.
I wonder if you could put meat paste and Monster Munch pizza. I wonder.
Meat paste and Monster Munch pizza. There's an idea. And I say that as a vegetarian. God, a vegetarian pizza with Monster Munch. Are we talking? Look, let's save this for the Patreon. I said we do a tight 40 minutes. Let's
derailed us instantly.
Let's talk about the possibility of crumbled Monster Munch on top of a meat paste pizza later on, Craig Manson. I'm excited. I'm salivating at the thought. Look, we've got lots to get through tonight. There has been quite a lot of news and goings on in the world of Scottish rugby. The big talking point, I think, this week has been, or over this weekend, was the SRU AGM. And there's a couple of big points to come out of that. I think the biggest point, and it took everybody by surprise, including the assembled media who were there covering it, was the fact that the new chair of Scottish Rugby Limited, and don't ask us to explain Scottish Rugby structures if you're new to this pod. John and I tried in a Patreon special, and it's changed since then, John.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. They thought we were too close to cracking it at that point, so they thought, we've got to change it, mix it up.
It's like decoding the kind of Masons kind of hieroglyphs around a Mason's lodge, or solving, finding the Higgs boson.
Da Vinci Code was actually about the SRU structure.
I thought it was more an inception. It's a rugby union inside a company that's inside another company.
That's inside a union.
That's inside a union,
It's all inside a dream and none of it's real.
That's the best, Craig. That is the best explanation I think we've ever had on this podcast for the structure of Scottish rugby. A union within a company within a union within a company within a board, something like that. Anyway, the chair of Scottish Rugby Limited, John McGuigan, has come in, promised kind of some quite deep-rooted changes to the way things were run, and taken his time to kind of get his feet under the table, understand how things work. What caught everybody off guard was that he stood up at the AGM and offered a wholehearted apology to Siobhan Cadigan's family for the way that they had been treated and dealt with by Scottish Rugby following her death. And for most people, I think, listening to the podcast would know the story, but Siobhan sadly passed away after a current international. There was a lot that came out afterwards about the way that she'd been treated whilst as an international, and then the way that her passing had been handled by the SRU, the way that she'd been honoured, the way that her teammates hadn't had details of the funeral passed on, and hadn't been able to honour her in the way that they wanted. The SRU then kind of pretty much kind of shut up shop, put the shutters down, refused to deal with anybody, basically lawyered up and said, we're not talking about this, there may be ongoing legal matters. John McGuigan has come in and offered that apology, John. I think it has caught us by surprise. I think one of the other surprising things, I think, was that this had been in the works for a while. He'd met with he'd wanted to meet with the family as one of his first things. I think, we were maybe a bit skeptical last week on the Patreon podcast when we were talking, saying, "No, is it kind of meet the new boss, same as the old boss? They're always full of the promise." But this is kind of actually delivering on something. It's the first time we've seen someone in Scottish Rugby deliver on a promise of change for a while, and it was a long time coming. This.
Yeah, it's a massive statement of intent, and the actual statement itself it's a hard read, because it's those of us that have been following this story and speaking about it at length, so much of it obviously rings true in terms of what we were believing. But no, it's good to see. It's good to see this. It's the start, and yes, it's too late in a lot of cases. That's fair, but it's a start, and it is really. It's really interesting to think. I think, are we on the precipice of actual governance and actual wholesale change in the SRU, and are we actually going to see progress? Because this action looks very much like we might actually see something, which, I don't think any of us, if you'd asked us last week, exactly, none of us would have believed that was possible. It was such a closed shop, so it's such a juxtaposition from where they've been previously. It's very startling.
Yeah, and Craig, I think obviously we haven't had the full internal report released by the SRU, but there were some things that he touched upon in the apology. And as I said, I think the family have said that they're grateful that they've listened to that apology. They're grateful for the time he spent speaking and listening to them, and that's the first time anyone from the SRU has sat down and done that with them. So they're very grateful for the time he's taken. But their view is, that there are still questions to be answered. I mean, you go through the apology that there seems to be an acceptance that Scottish Rugby should have supported Siobhan better, particularly around welfare and care, that they take responsibility for Scottish Rugby's handling of certain elements surrounding the funeral, including not relaying families' wishes to every player, which meant some of Siobhan's teammates did not get the opportunity to attend a funeral. And we let the family down by not directly contacting the family nor visiting after Siobhan's passing to offer our condolences. Since Siobhan's passing, there have also been other events which should have been handled differently by the organisation. This also relates to how we reference Siobhan. We recognise that Siobhan is one of our people too. So, to me, and one of the things, obviously the family have said is, questions need to be answered by some individuals. To kind of come out and make a statement about, and some of those things are quite serious. I think particularly the failure to kind of offer condolence. It's hard to see how Mark Dodson in particular could come out of this and still save face. And indeed, I think there were questions asked at the AGM, and he was still kind of taking the line of, "Oh well, we did what we thought was right at the time," which you've then got the chair of the SR, the Scottish Rugby Limited stood next to you saying, "But we got it wrong."
Yeah, I think you also have to. I'm sure, if I'm correct, and I'm going to paraphrase here, so it's not exactly what he said, but it's along the lines of, even in this situation, our level of humanity is limited by the situation, and where and let me be frank. I have two hats on here. There's the side of me that's what's happened up to her death is one side of it, and that's rugby, and that's the care, duty of care, etc. on that side. But when Siobhan passed, the disrespect that has been shown ever since she passed to the family, her partner, and her friends and teammates has all, in my eyes, and this is just in my eyes, I'm not saying that I'm not speaking for the pod, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but in my eyes, to get away from showing any type of guilt or any type of maybe, any sort of link to being guilty of anything to do with Siobhan's, the last part of Siobhan's life. They have shown absolutely no humanity and tried to just almost pull the blanket over their heads or the duvet over their heads and say, this is not happening, and put their fingers in the ear. Yes, Glasgow and Edinburgh, immediately at the game after she passed, put her picture up and paid tribute to her. But, and again, I will say this, we've said this many times, guys, if that was a Scottish male player, international player, the first game at Murrayfield, sure, before the anthems, there would be a minute's silence or applause, whatever the player would or the family would have wanted, and the picture would have gone up, and there would be a huge announcement where everyone can pay their respects. Unfortunately, because of their silence, because of their lack of humanity, because of their saving their backsides, etc., 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 whatever way you want to look at it, because this is my opinion, this is nobody else's opinion. It's up to you to make your own opinion. But it just came across that they were saving the backsides, they were showing increasingly more and more disrespect to the family and the friends, etc., and to Siobhan herself. And it's an absolutely poor situation to be in. Yes, the new chairman has shown a glimpse of that, and he's sorry for what he's given his apologies, etc. We will now have to wait and see where that goes. Because there is a report that nobody has seen.
Yeah, and I think that's it, John. Nobody's seen the report, but I think for me, as Craig said, that particularly, I think the kind of things that happened in the, Craig's right. There's two elements. This is kind of what happened in the, before Siobhan passed away, and then what the SRU's actions after that. Yeah. There wasn't any threat of legal action when she passed away. There was no, to even show the basic level of kind of decency, to go pay your condolences in person, and as Craig said, if it had been a man, it would have been completely different. This whole situation would be handled completely different, and it goes. I think at the heart of this is I struggle to see with a chair coming in saying promising transparency, which is completely goes against the way the SRU have operated up to now, offering this apology whilst Mark Dodson sat there next to them. I struggle to see how some people will be able to remain in post if they follow through on the promise to honour Siobhan's legacy. So how would you feel as you're the person that's handled this situation badly, and now the SRU has to honour the legacy of Siobhan? That's what they're committed to. And with that hanging over you now, I personally think that on that alone, Mark Dodson, I know we've said he survived worse things before, but I personally now think that Mark Dodson's post is untenable. I think it's untenable for him to remain as CEO of SRU following that apology.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Cammy. I think, the fact that it's taken that U-turn for us to, we've been sitting here saying that actually the way the company's handled it and the way that Dodson in particular, we know it's not been the most transparent situation. It has lacked a degree of humanity throughout the whole process. I think, we're sitting here and we're going, well, his position was untenable before, if we were being realistic, and actually he shouldn't be in post. When all this came to light, he should have done the right thing and walked away there and then. He should have done the right thing and apologised to the family and actually handled this properly. But his position was untenable at that point. There's more than Dodson, though. And I think this could be a watershed moment for Scottish Rugby. I think we could see quite a lot of clear out at this point. If they are going to honour Siobhan's legacy, they should be looking to clear this out and start building a proper structure now.
Never happened.
Oh, I don't disagree, Craig. I'm saying they should.
Yeah, although, yeah. No. I'm speaking as someone who's incredibly frustrated with the situation, John. So I'm not trying to pick at you. I just think it's, again, we laughed and joked about it right at the beginning of the pod. That's one part of the SRU saying sorry. Yeah. And there's several other parts of the SRU. So and Mark Dodson is in control of other parts of the SRU. So
I think the one thing that kind of, and I think moving on and think about the rest of the AGM, the other suggestion is that Super 6 is going down the toilet, and that's a big that to me would be another kind of nail in the coffin of Mark Dodson's career at the SRU, because that's his big baby, and it's been, we covered Super 6 on the podcast for a while, and it's to an extent it's a good product. I don't think they know what it is anymore, and I think it's become muddled. I don't particularly think COVID helped at one point, but there's so much controversy around that, around how the franchises were awarded, around the process, around how it's run, around what its actual purpose is. It's not, the under-20s are going down the pan as well. It's not producing. It's producing. I've had some people in our mentions on Twitter saying it's produced some players, and it has, but it's not producing enough, John. And so I think for that big, what was essentially Mark Dodson's vanity project, for that to go on top of this, I can't see any other CEO in any other organization surviving that kind of double whammy.
No. And I think with the Super 6, right, so your point, it has produced some players. What did we do before the Super 6? How did, because funnily enough, there was rugby players before then too. And
John Hardy played for Hoyk. That's what happened before the Super 6. When he was coming back from injury.
Yes. That's all fine and well. That's true. And I know there's a lot of arguments as to how ridiculous the whole placement system was and all that. But to use it as a development tool to say we're giving people experience of semi-professional, professional rugby to bridge the gap between the amateur game and the pro clubs. Well, we managed to produce players, and I think with the academies the way they are now, yes, they're, the under-20s are not going well, but it's just we're doing little bits of everything, and not actually we don't seem to have a coherent approach to it. I think the Super 6 had potential. It just was, they took the loaded gun and shot themselves in the foot straight away with the franchise process. It was just you lost half the country at that point, which I think it was ironic.
But part of the reason for it, Craig, was because you had clubs, particularly in the Premiership, who wanted to go pro, who kind of kept chirping on, going, "Oh, if we paid our players, we could have a good run at this." And I think there have been unintended benefits. I think it's kind of you've got more of a level playing field below the Premiership level in the clubs that now kind of can be more competitive. I know for the likes of Berwick, they've shot up the leagues from the moment other clubs have had to stop paying players to come in. But there's other ways to deliver on that without kind of impacting on that money would be better spent elsewhere in a different structure and would benefit Scottish Rugby more.
Yeah, I think John's hit the nail on the head, and it's very, very rarely do I come on this podcast and agree with John all the time. So, but the not having a spread of Super 6 teams across Scotland was the first difficulty. I know why they wanted to do it, because you had, would you believe, a similar system to the English Premiership, where you had sugar daddies coming into each club who then spend the money for a couple of years and then get someone on the committee would not let them drink past the kicking out time, and they would take their toys and go and dance somewhere else, go and play somewhere else, and that team would then sink from winning the league, winning the Premiership down to National 3. It just seemed to be the way it went. So it was mismanaged at that point. So I understand what they're trying to do with the Super Six. First, to answer your question about the Super Six maybe being dead, well, it's dead because there was virtually no fanfare about the final. It was very quiet. The SRU didn't, they promoted it as barely as they had to, and then, which was a real shame. But I struggle to see where we're going to go further down the line, because the only way we can, if they're going to invest any money, then is it going to go into the Premiership, and as the Premiership clubs now going to start paying players, because we have that system within the pro clubs, because we're trying to bring new players through Scotland, but we also fill our clubs with players that we've brought in from England, Ireland, Wales, abroad, France, etc., South Africa. So, it's an absolute mess, and where are we going to spend our money? How are we going to do it? How is the grassroots going to benefit from the money that they're going to stop spending on the Super Six clubs? It's a really difficult situation.
Yeah, it is, but I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because there's been talk for a while about kind of revolutionising things, and we'll watch this space, I think, is the key message there. The other, I want to talk, I think in the Patreon, what we'll get onto, we might talk about the plans for Murrayfield, because I'm not entirely sure that increasing hospitality is the way forward. I'm not entirely sure I agree that allowing more rich people through to watch rugby is necessarily the way to grow the game and stick it behind a paywall. But, we're well into the podcast now, and we could be here all day debating about whether or not rugby's here to benefit people that have big people who like big lunches. I mean, it's not.
That's a whole episode on its own.
It's a whole episode on its own, and Johnny's not here to give us the Tory view on that.
Hey!
Salmon blinis. That's what Mark Dodson's plan is for Murrayfield. More 15% salmon blinis. That's what he wants.
I'm telling you, that's what Murrayfield needs. He needs to get rid of the salmon blinis, and it's 30% salmon blinis and 70% meat paste sandwiches and bags of Monster Munch. That's it.
That's it. More Monster Munch.
Yeah.
So the other big bit of news is the announcement of the new Celtic League competition. It's kind of back, but it's not back. We had this kind of trial competition for developing women players, Craig, last year, which went really well. There's some really good games that we saw, particularly for the Scotland team, played really well. It's kind of the players that were on the fringes of the Scotland squad that didn't have pro contracts down in England, and some of them even came back and played. Were released by the clubs to come back and play a couple of games. We've now got this idea. There's now 2 teams per Ireland, Wales, and is it Italy? I've got that right. Ireland, Wales. Or is it just Ireland, Wales, and Scotland?
I think it's Ireland, Wales,
Scotland. That's it.
Yeah.
I think that's. I mean, it's interesting, but there's not really been an announcement about how that's to be funded. So it's it's all it's great, kind of having the 2 high-profile teams, but you need the infrastructure behind that. Super Six money. Oh, can you imagine the Blazers?
Oh,
between Super Six money and World Rugby funding, that's how it'll be funded.
Jonny will have to storm from his box and down to his private VIP parking and drive out of Murrayfield.
It is, I think, but I'm all for it, and I don't want anyone to think I'm not all for it, but I also think it's the same issue we've had with women's rugby before, is without the infrastructure, without the support for the women players that you're asking to play, to have that number of players playing across 2 teams without support is a challenge. Yeah. And as we've seen with the international team, you pay them well, you remove the worries that exist outside of rugby, they play better, they're freer to do what they want. So you're not solving that problem if you're just going to stick 40 or 50 young girls into in inverted commas pro setup without proper support.
Sorry, John.
No, it's fine. You go, mate.
For me, I've got a little bit of background into it, and I've had a couple of conversations about it. And from what I know, There's the big difference though is that it's from a player point of view, the gameplay, the physicality, just the whole experience is a huge step up from Scottish Features, or the programme that Scotland have put in for bringing young adults through the women's side of things. They go to these Celtic games, and when the Thistles played, it was a huge step up, and they loved it. So we really, it's something that maybe this is a pathway that the men should go down as well, is having almost an Edinburgh Glasgow A team to develop and play A teams within the Welsh and the Island setups, etc., or go and play. I don't know. But from what I can tell, the Thistles and the Celtic League, it's almost like a sponge. The players are ready for it. They want to play. They are really looking forward to it. It's going to really challenge them, and they're looking forward for that challenge. So I think it's as long as Scotland and the SRU, I'll do a Patreon. I'll use a non-Patreon word. Don't mess it up. I think it would be a very, very good. It's going to continue to be a very, very good thing.
How could they possibly mess it up when, for example, I was reading the article there that the Welsh Rugby Union, their plan is to hold open trials for their teams. Just open tryouts. Just you play rugby, come and play.
There was something. No,
that's
but
class. But
that is class. But there was something about that, and they've done it in Scotland as well. Craig, correct me if I'm wrong. The other day, particularly for the pathways for girls, is that the nominations come from coaches. Nominate someone you think's ready for the step up, and you come along to trials. The way it used to, the way it used to be done back in the day. Your Reds v Blues, and But I do think there's a bit of a leveler there, John. That we know the problem. One of the big problems in the pathways in Scotland is it's sometimes not your ability, but who you know and who's at your club and who your club knows that gets you in front of the right people at the right time consistently. Because that's the other is, but you can't just go and play one trial. You've got to be there consistently.
Yeah,
having something like this, like an open trial, where it's open to any coach nominating any player they think is good enough to then go along, have a go, see what the people who are responsible think of them. That is not just for the women's game, but I think wider for the boys' game as well. Could be a game changer.
Yeah. If you're looking for a way to increase participation, I know obviously I was taking the mick a wee bit out of the Welsh because the idea of they're so cash strapped that they're just inviting anybody to pull on their boots. It was tongue in cheek in terms of definitely it's a way if you want to give people access to opportunities. It's the sports that have got this right. It's you have these centralized opportunities to turn up, be it a coach nomination, but actually, go a step further. Like put your name down as long as you've got a signature behind you that you can go and turn up at tryouts. Then do it. Like allow these kids, allow everybody the opportunity to go and play.
And that's worked. That's essentially why the Exiles program has worked better and produced arguably a few more players or higher quality players than the internal academy and scouting systems, because the Exiles program is you turn up and tell us you're Scottish qualified and you have a go, and one of our Exile scouts will have a look at you, and if you like the look of you, that you're in, as opposed to you don't even get in a trial unless your dad's had a word with somebody in Murrayfield who's sent somebody to have a look at you.
You've played 10 years for your club, your local club, but it just so happens your local club's on an island, so you can't, you don't get the same access to see the selectors. So then you don't get the scholarship to Merchie, and that's pro career done.
That's the big difference with the women's game, and I guess you're highlighting that as well. It's not just the standard big clubs that are producing players. You're seeing, for example, if you look at Bigger, for example, who have produced some fantastic players from their girls rugby program, and they were one of the first clubs to to really attach. They didn't even they didn't start the adult game; they started the girls' game, and really promoted the girls' side, and they actually invested and built slowly through the system, and brought these girls through to adult rugby, and so you've got these non-standard rugby teams producing fantastic players now. And when I say non-standard, I'm not being derogatory. I'm being they're just not in the old school. These are the big rugby teams, and these are the smaller rugby teams.
They're not coming through traditional pathways, Craig.
Thank you for clarifying. I threw all of my talent into the beginning part of this podcast, and now my mind's gone mush.
Speaking of which, look, we've got 5 or 10 minutes left here, Craig. At the end here, we should get on to the big talking point of the day. And apologies, we're not going to get time to kind of go into any great depth analysis of Glasgow Edinburgh this week. But it's early season URC, so let's not get too excited. Blair Kinghorn is off to Toulouse. Has it been confirmed?
Allegedly.
Is it still allegedly? Are we still talking allegedly? Because last time I checked Twitter, it was all very much this is going to be confirmed within the next 24 hours. Are we still at allegedly stage?
We're still at allegedly. We're still at the rugby pass stage. So if Rugby Pass are talking about it could be absolutely.
It's gone from we've gone from earlier today. I think Midi. The French paper Midi to Ruck to a couple of online blogs, and we're now up to Rugby Pass. So we're getting
Rugby Pass. Mind you, I also saw Jamie Lyle had been tweeting about it as well. So,
Jamie said it's definitely right then.
Yeah, it's definitely.
From a Scotland point of view, I think this could be a good thing for Blair Kinghorn. I think it's a chance to go away, develop his game, play rugby in a new country. Get out of the Edinburgh bubble a little bit, because I think to be fair to him, he has been, especially with the BK10 experiment. I think that did expose him a little bit to the kind of darker side of Scottish rugby fandom. So to maybe get out and just get away from that into the cauldron that is French rugby, I don't know how much better that will be. But does it? I mean, so there's that point, Craig. I suppose the other point is, does that leave Edinburgh short-handed, or is it an opportunity?
Oh, right. Well, first on his side of things, it's a great opportunity. Go and earn your money, Blair. Go and experience something different. Absolutely fine by that. My only concern is that yes, he's going allegedly as a replacement for Jamini. Yep. But everyone's going, oh, that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, but you are remembering that Ramos is about to come back to Toulouse, and also there is a small Italian called Capuzzo who's there, who is a wonderful 15 as well. So from what I can tell, they may be taking him on for what he can offer, funnily enough, with the BK10 experiment, that he's going to be able to cover 10, 11, 14, 15 for the team, and give them those options as well. Not only that, but also you forget that no matter what anybody says, he has a prodigious talent on the rugby field. So he certainly, whatever team gets him and signs him, they're getting a wonderful player. On the other side of things, yes, everyone's going, that's fine, go and let him go and enjoy himself, spread his wings, that's fine. But we have Boffelli, who's currently injured, if I'm right, with a foot injury.
Yep.
And then I think Wes Goosen, who has played 15 before.
Goosen can play 15.
Yep. Yeah. Darcy Graham, who can play 15. So it's not really, we're not tripping over 15s. And also the other side of things, and let's go back to the BK10 experiment. Charlie Savala's just been lent to Northampton Saints. Or was it Saints or Tigers? I'm sure it's Saints. So we're kind of bare at 10, because if Healy isn't playing or comes to a rest week, who goes in at 10 for Edinburgh? So there's some questions there. And I don't think, from what I can tell and what the discussions are, I don't think the SRU have had much to say about it, because I think Blair Kinghorn's been offered so much money that he's just going, see it.
Tassel
So, yeah,
especially if it's mid-contract or mid. If he is moving
Mid-season.
with immediate effect, there will be
Yeah.
a small fee. Yeah, he's out of contract at the end of the year, I believe, but there'll be a small fee involved. And let's be
and
honest.
a big Blair Kinghorn shaped hole in the side of Murrayfield.
absolutely.
Well, yes, aye, and let's be fair. You know, the books, the SRU books. You know, every little penny that can be saved just now. You know, let's face it, Edinburgh probably won't get the chance to replace Kinghorn with a 10 unless it's a development 10. In the same way that we're not going to get a chance over in Glasgow to replace Ali Price and the British and Irish Lion that he is with anything other than an Academy 9. You know, that's the economics we're working to now. And anybody that thinks that financial report was good news for Scottish Rugby is laughing because it's nonsense.
Blair Kinghorn must be at least 10 big dinners an hour. 10 big hospitality dinners an hour. That's what he's on.
He must be.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
Yeah, what's 6'5"? They said.
Yeah, same height as Ben Healy though. That's your problem. You brought in two. Like, you can't be bringing in these massive backs and then like expecting to keep them, because I think like the cost for your canteen will be ridiculous.
I think it's one of those situations though. I think we're similar to Wales and to Ireland, etc. Not so much Ireland because you're not, well, luckily Wales as well. I suppose they don't allow their players to play abroad, but we're going to have these high end players be attracted by big money opportunities. And to be brutally honest, come on, I remember Scotland and Sean Everett and the SRU all saying, well, we're going to try our best to keep him. And it's like, wait a minute, he's been offered money to go and play at Toulouse. Like, you know, let me think. I want to stay with a team that hasn't even, like the best silverware we've won is the hubcap, the Pizza Crunch trophy. Yeah, and then what I want to do is I don't really want to go to a French team that's won how many European Cups, and you know, it's like, come on,
Charlie Shield, Dupont, I mean.
Well, he's off the sevens. That's what they're getting.
Well, yeah.
But also BK9.
Funnily enough, I've just seen a comment come up, and it's one of the comments I'd said to you boys earlier on in our chat. I said, well, you know, there's always room for Ollie Smith to come along there, mate. Well,
we'll see. We will see if the SIU do some old switcherooing before the week is out, depending on what happens with.
Pitchfork is getting sharpened as we speak.
I can just see it at the Welcome to Glasgow signs on the M8. There's just torches.
You're staying here, Ollie. You're staying here.
The 1872 interesting, just lots of fights in the stands over which players are coming and going, who you're allowed and who you're not.
No, you keep Ali Price. No, we don't want Ali Price. No, you don't want Ali Price.
Oh, dearie.
Oh,
yeah,
well, look, yeah. On that note, and also because I know John Anderson needs to shoot off very shortly.
I do, yes, thanks.
I do. We will end this week's podcast. If you're watching live and you're a Patreon, don't worry, folks. We'll be back in the next 5 minutes or so to carry on with the Patreon podcast. We'll be back next week. We'll maybe talk a bit more about Edinburgh and Glasgow. Might be some more news, no doubt, happening in the meantime. But for the moment, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from John and Craig.
Goodbye, folks.
Bye.